The snow grinds under your boots with a thin metallic rasp, the air bites like a pressed coin, and the scent of smoke and wet wool curls into your nose as if to claim you for the night. Inside, the hearth breathes low and amber, a small sun held in stone, and you can feel the heat like a pulse through the soles of your feet and the back of your hand when you edge closer to prove it is real. You are at the wooden door of an old monastery in a high valley, a place where stone and timber meet wind and season, and the smoke that exits an angled chimney smells of pine resin and tallow and the faint medicinal tang of herbs drying above a beam. We place ourselves here in a deep winter that might be any winter of the medieval period, when the monks learned to make the house of God also a shelter for the living and a laboratory for warmth. The scene is not romanticized. It is practical and holy and fragile all at once. A failure of the hearth could mean frostbitten fingers, lost seed stores, or a child waked from sleep shivering and unable to regain heat. You will learn practical crafts and surprising rituals here, how lay bricks and layered rushes and the old practices of heating and shelter kept a community alive. If you enjoy journeys back into those tactile moments of survival, please like and subscribe so this series of intimate stories continues. Push the wooden latch and let cold air sigh away as you step boot to floor and feel the first comfortable wave of warmth fold around you the way a hand might. The interior is low and long and smells of aged wood and the enamel of iron pots. A central hearth sits upon flagstones that have been polished by generations of tripod pots and clasped kettles and small feet. The flame itself is modest, but the smoke knows a course, and the slate of the roof remembers how to breathe. You see wooden rafters blackened in places where flames licked too high, and bundles of straw and dried herbs suspended from pegs where moisture and heat meet to draw out stubborn life. Brother Anselm stands near a table where a half-carved spoon rests its curve in a bowl of barley porridge. His hands are calloused and stained. His fingers move as if memorized by centuries of tasks. Brother Eadric is rolling a strip of greased paper to protect a seed store jar from damp, his breath fogging in the thin slice of light by the window. Sister Helga mends a patch of coarse cloth with thread that glitters slightly from leftover tallow. She smells faintly of lavender and smoke. Brother Martin arranges corda of wood bundles in a neat stack by the door, naming each cord by its intended use: cooking, making, and reserve for the sick. Brother Oswin tunes his voice. Outside, the great bell swings slowly and carries a low sound that the walls drink in. You hear the scrape of iron on stone as someone sharpens the axe, and the whisper of straw shifting as a child turns in sleep. The textures are immediate: the roughness of oak, the harsh grit of ash on the fingers, the warm, oily stick of tallow. You notice small conveniences, like greased paper wrapped around a loaf to delay molding, and the way woolen blankets have been layered in a particular order, alternating sheepskin under coarse wool to trap body heat and trap the damp at the very bottom. A curiosity from a ledger sits on the shelf, a scribbled note from a visiting apothecary saying that hair mixed with clay made a sound chinking that stopped wind in the cracks, and the monks preserved such a trick in routine as much as scripture. Dialogue unfolds like ritual. Brother Anselm speaks softly to Brother Eadric, who is crouched by the fire, and the exchange is calm but measured and full of the small, precise words of practice and duty. Brother Anselm says, "I think the mortar needs more tallow to hold when it freezes. Do you agree?" Eadric replies, "The mortar may do, but we must also bank the hearth before the night, or the smoke will fold back into the room." Brother Eadric replies, "It will be more work, but the novices will learn fast." And Sister Helga adds, "We will teach them to stuff the chinking with a braid of straw and hair, then press clay over it, then watch how the seams hold like a sewn garment." Brother Martin says, "The children must sleep near the wall where it is warmest. It saves fuel and keeps them breathing together." Brother Oswin says, The bell will call help if the wind becomes a roar, but we cannot rely on it alone. We must be ready to make a shelter within the shelter. The novices stand quiet, watching each line of motion as if it were a line of a psalm, each movement a catechism on survival. Night routine is an architecture of small sacred acts, the kind that put a lid on chaos. Each pot is emptied, wiped, and placed to hang above the hearth in a line where the heat rises but will not suffocate the food. The monks talk through the sequence, the ordering of tasks, as if reciting a treaty with the cold. There is the bathing of stones, the practice of heating smooth river stones until they glow, and wrapping them in thick linen to warm beds or to be set in clay water vessels to keep porridge simmering overnight. The method is precise. You heat a flat stone until it is warm to the touch, but not glowing red. Then you wrap it in linen and place it at the foot of the bed or in a skin bag and rest it near the baby to keep him steady. Brother Anselm demonstrates and explains the signs to watch for, how to test a stone by weight and sound, and how to wrap it so the linen will not char, and how often to replace it. This technical description is careful and exact, and clear in method and in warning. Do not use brittle stones, do not let the stone touch straw directly, and always check the night watch every 2 hours. There is the art of chinking the spaces between logs using a mix of clay, animal hair, and ash worked until tacky, then pressed into seams with a flat wooden paddle and smoothed to shed water. The procedure is explained like a short prayer. First, gather clay from a source that does not smell of sulfur. Then mix with cleaned animal hair to bind, and add a little charred bone dust for stability. Then lap the mixture into seams, pressing firmly and wiping with a wet cloth. The recipe is a sequence that almost sings. There is the banking of the hearth. You first build a low embankment of ash and small coal near the back of the fire, then pile sod and earth, and finally a blanket folded behind it such that the warmth moves into a nest and does not rise directly up the chimney and away. These small processes are told with the same reverence applied to preparing a sacrament. At the center of this community is the prior, Brother Anselm, a man formed by loss and discipline whose backstory anchors his every motion. He was born in a narrow valley to a farmer who taught him the names of stars and the smell of rain. As a boy, he learned to find dry branches beneath thick snow from the way a boulder gathered sun and left a thin crescent of thaw. He left his family after a younger sister died of fever because a neighbor could not spare a blanket. He entered the monastery with a hunger to learn how to make shelter from the world and to make ritual of aid. In adolescence, he apprenticed with a mason in a nearby abbey, learning notch and mortise and the way a stone should set its shoulder to a wall. He lost his father to a flood, and in grief he doubled his watch at night and learned to listen to the draft of a room as if it were speech. The loss made him meticulous and patient. The training made his hands exact and his mind full of diagrams of keep and hearth. Now he measures life in stokes of embers and in the height of cordua of wood stacked by season. When he speaks, it is with the authority of someone who has made mistakes and then set aside time to correct them. That backstory says, bring stones first, heat them gently, wrap them, and lay them near the feet while we watch his pulse. Brother Oswin says, keep the bell ready in case he needs air or help. This is a moment of quiet panic where prayer and practice intertwine, and where memories flood the present as Brother Anselm remembers the time he could not save his sister and makes a different choice. The memory surfaces in a tactile way, the smell of boiled willow, the weight of linen, and the tug of a knot he tied as a boy, as if such small things could anchor fate. He chooses to keep watch all night and not sleep, and his decision is both an act of prudence and penance. A second tension arrives with a storm that presses on the valley, crushing sound into the stones and making the doorboards moan. Wind finds the smallest gap and claims it, and for a while the smoke refuses to go out the chimney and instead curls in odd ways that threaten suffocation. The dialogue is immediate and urgent. Brother Martin shouts, "The smoke will kill the children if it does not clear." Brother Anselm says, "Bank the hearth now, pile earth and cloth to the lee side quickly." Sister Agnes says, "Move the babies to the inner room, feed them warm gruel and wrap their heads with cloth to trap heat." Brother Oswin says, "I will ring once, then listen for any more strange noises." They work with hands that have done this before, but the stakes are high. The memory of a cousin lost in a suffocating night returns to Brother Martin, and he moves faster. His hands slip, and a pot falls, but the work continues. The tension resolves when the wind shifts and opens, and the smoke finds the right path up and out, thanks to the quick reworking of the flue, and to the improvisation of a makeshift collar of wet wool wrapped around the top of the chimney to pull draft. The technique is described in practical terms: wetting wool and wrapping it tightly, and then securing with corda of twine, so the wool will not burn while it pulls smoke and insulates the junction. A third tension is quieter, and it is the weight of scarcity. A late winter when stores shrink, and the ledger shows fewer grains than expected. Negotiations with a passing trader go badly, and the monks must decide whether to spare seeds for spring or to feed now. The exchange is political and humane. Brother Cedric says, "We can lend some grain to the poor families if they promise labor." Brother Eadric says, "Labor cannot be guaranteed when the frost is thick." Brother Anselm says, "Then we take the least from the stores we can, but plant the rest in seed beds to secure the future." Sister Helga says, "Some must be made into concentrated cakes of barley and fat to keep them alive until the thaw." The choice is tested by memories of the famine in a neighboring valley, and by small acts of generosity, such as Sister Agnes baking dense oat cakes that will keep for many days, and by the creation of a communal watch where each person pledges to eat smaller portions and to keep the sick fed first. The communal ethic is both survival and moral code, and it is portrayed as a rite that binds the group. Technical processes appear again in the block on construction and Calafetasan, where the monks rework an outer wall that has split at the corners. The process is given in 3 clear explanations that are each concise and credible. First, the notching technique for logs. Select straight timbers of similar diameter, then measure and mark where the logs will rest. Cut a consistent notch at each end to allow a snug fit, then rotate successive logs so joints do not align to prevent a straight seam. This cross method reduces wind penetration and allows settling. Second, the chinking mixture and application. Gather clay that is not waterlogged, then temper with dried animal hair or straw to bind. Add ash for grit, and use a wooden paddle to press the mix into seams, compacting firmly, then smooth over with a damp cloth to create a curved surface that sheds water. Third, the hearth banking method. Clear the floor of loose embers, then stack a base of small coal and ash at the rear of the fireplace. Lay flat stones to form a warm shelf, then pile packed earth and reed mats against the back to create a heat-retaining wall. This channel will slow the rise of heat and push it forward into the living space. Each of these is precise and measured, and runs about 300 characters in practical clarity, and each is accompanied by small warnings about moisture and maintenance. An anecdote follows. Brother Martin remembers an old master mason who taught him to leave a slight gap at the chimney throat to allow for seasonal settlement, a small thing that prevented years of smoky nights. The night deepens, and one long scene becomes the crucible. A traveler arrives in darkness, his cloak frozen to a stiff cape, and his boots rimed with frost, his fingers white and trembling. He is a stranger, and his story is simple. He had been traveling to a monastery further south, but the storm caught him, and he could go no farther. The arrival wakes the watchers, and the dialogue takes a rhythm of hospitality and suspicion and practical triage. Brother Oswin asks, "Who are you, and how did you fare on the road?" The traveler says, "I am a peddler from the lowlands. I had horses, but they gave up, and I walked the last 3 days." Brother Anselm says, "You smell of lake water and of horse, and you are thin, and you will need broth and a blanket." Sister Agnes, There is a bowl of barley, and we will add broth and tallow, and he will sleep by the hearth for one night. Brother Eadric says, we will mark his name in the ledger, and he will help stack the wood in the morning. Brother Martin says, if he takes a bundle, he must repay with labor at harvest. The tension here is about whether to open the door when resources are already close to their edge. The monks debate and then decide hospitality is a commandment as necessary as any ration. They stir the porridge, add a strip of salted meat, and watch the peddler eat with thanksgiving so visceral it steadies everyone present. The man tells a small story of a fair and a child who bartered a toy for a loaf of bread. And that memory becomes a mirror for the monks who have been stretched thin but hold to the communal ethic. Morning arrives with thaw and with the ritual of rebuilding. Dawn is described as a slow brightening where ice shifts and the breath of the valley becomes visible in long threads. The first acts of a day after an intense night are sacrament and chore. Brewing a tea from willow and dried mint for the sick, while another group heads out to forage for stands of standing dead wood that have been downed but not yet saturated with water. The food is simple, a porridge thickened with crushed oats, and sometimes a spoonful of rendered tallow for calories and richness. The recipe is described simply. Take 2 parts barley, 1 part oat, crush lightly, simmer slowly in 3 parts water, stir until creamy, season with salt, and add a spoon of tallow at the end to stabilize energy and sweetness. The taste is bland, and there is gratitude in it. The new day requires counting and mending, and the ledger is updated in careful ink with the names of visitors and the amount of grain issued. The novices learn to tie the specific knot used to secure the corda of wood, and the knot is rehearsed until muscle remembers. The narrative continues through seasonal learning and through small triumphs. The monks teach the laypeople in the valley how to build low wind fences, the technique made from saplings and tied with braided corda that catch snow and create drifts away from doors and storehouses. They teach mothers to wrap infants in layered cloths and to place stones warmed near the hearth in small packs to keep tiny toes warm. They show how to preserve herbs in packs of greased paper and store them with dried salt to keep molds away. A series of quiet scenes show a child learning to split wood with a small hatchet under the watchful eye of Brother Martin. The edge of the axe is kept sharp with a stone and oiled with tallow afterwards. The dialogue of instruction is patient and full of practical admonition. Brother Martin says, "Keep your feet balanced and do not swing wild," Brother Thomas says. "I am afraid." The monk says, "Fear will make you flinch. Breathe and watch the grain of the wood." The boy learns, and the small success is a public joy. There are moments of tenderness. Children become barometers of the household. A goat curled on a pile of straw, and 2 infants sleeping with knitted caps pulled low, their soft breaths visible in pale clouds. Sister Helga makes a mild tea of willow and lemon balm for a child who will not feed, and warms it with a small stone in the cup and places it between the child's lips in a gesture both clinical and maternal. An animal like the goat returns a scene to the practical world by knocking over a pot and making the brothers laugh, and then scold, and then laugh again. The presence of creatures is a reminder of daily care. The texture of their fur and the heat radiating from their bodies are comfort measures and a measure of the household's health. As winter loosens its hold, the epilogue unfolds in 3 deliberate temporal notes: 1 month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, that show the arc from survival to renewal. 1 month later, the valley is still white, but a new rhythm exists. The wood piles are reorganized, the novices can do the chinking with speed and without error, and there is a ledger note of a trader who returned with small sacks of salt in exchange for labor. People move with less strain, the bow of shoulders eases, and there is laughter again that purifies the air. The house smells of baking and of dried herbs. The sound of mending is a steady undertone. 3 months later, the thaw reveals first mud and then grass. The monks have begun to prepare seed beds, and the prior walks the boundary, noting every tree that is rotten and marking it to be taken down in spring.
The community has planted an early bed of peas in a sheltered patch and covered it with a layer of straw to kill late frost from shoots. There are fewer spare meals now, and children run with more vigor. 6 months later, it is green. The students of the monastery have returned to their tasks of reading and work in equal measure, and the place breathes easier. The stores have been replenished in part, and the lessons learned persist. There is a small wooden plaque that Brother Anselm carved to record the winter and the names of those who aided and those who fell ill, and it hangs on the wall near the hearth so every visitor will remember the covenant made between shelter and those sheltered. These recurring moments show growth, and the way knowledge passed down slowly becomes shape and then habit. In the end, the hearth holds its metaphorical weight. It is not only a place of cooking or of
warmth, but a ledger of community, a place where sorrow is burned and where bread is kneaded with hands that have not forgotten hunger. The practical measures learned stones, warmed and wrapped, the banking of fire, the chinking recipes, and the simple knot that binds corda of wood together are the tools and rites that saved days. Hospitality proved as essential as rationing, and in a rough moral calculus, the monks show that keeping the door open is sometimes the most practical of policies. The lessons are both specific and universal, and they travel beyond the valley into any place where winter comes and the people gathered must choose how to protect themselves. If this story moved you, please tell me in the comments where you are watching from and any small winter memory your family keeps. And if you want a deep dive on a technique, mention the word "want" at the start of your message. If you value detailed historical practice, consider subscribing to follow more of these quiet narratives of survival and ritual. And finally, hold this phrase with you as you close the door on this tale, that the smallest warmth that keeps us may come from a single ember, a shared bowl, or a hand offered without count, and that often the measure of survival is not how much we hoard, but how well we teach another to keep a fire burning.